whenever I get some sort of success or whenever I have a next step, I just can't take the step. It's kind of hard to explain, but I would freeze, and I don't know if it was a fear of success or a fear of failure, but I just couldn't grow fully. Like I'd always have to hide whenever I had any sort of praise or recognition, if that makes sense.
So you get higher and higher and higher on that mountain, whatever that mountain might be.
Yeah.
And as the peak becomes visible, you kind of back off.
Yeah.
And you hesitate a little bit.
Because after you see the peak, you see the amount, everything that comes with it. I'm comfortable where I am. I'm safe. I was in a safe spot. And once you see that all the work that comes out of, once you get out of the peak, you can see the whole valley and the entire trek that you have to make.
Okay.
And it was hard for me to kind of get over that hump.
So there's a little bit of irony there. The idea that you say you wanted more. Talk about that. Like, when you said you wanted more, what were some of maybe the top two or three things that you wanted more about? Was it relationship? Was it physical, like monetary type things? Was it like what, when you say you wanted more, what, and we're talking your mid-20s, early mid-20s now. So you're no longer a boy. You're just stepping into your manhood, and you weren't happy as to where you were at. Is that a result of childhood? Like what was more to you at that point? Well,
I always wanted, I mean, everyone wants to be successful in their own way, but to me, success was always freedom of time and freedom of money.
Okay.
And I always wanted, a lot of people in my life, I always saw them get stuck, or I always got the information of, you just get a good job and you work it hard and you find someone and you settle down. And that always sounded awful to me.
So that's the childhood thing I was asking about. So that was what was taught to you as a child. Like that was the mountain to climb right there, was to get a good job, to settle down. Yeah.
Yeah. And that just wasn't me. I can remember back in, I think it was grade 3, there was this little thing that we did about our future. And the whole class, there was one question: do you want to be a millionaire? And I'm the only one that said yes. And everyone said, well, no, because money is the root of all evil, all the stuff about money. And I remember,
did you go to a religious school?
I went to a religious school.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, no, but like, don't you see the good that can come out of that? And it wasn't just the money. Money's whatever it is. But I just remember thinking, like, why are you trapped in this box? This thinking, like, there's so much more out there.
Interesting. So you were surrounded by people who looked at money as evil, essentially.
My whole life.
Your whole life? Yeah.
I've got some family members that are doing pretty well, we'll say, but for the most part, I was always told as a child.
Okay.
That it's the root of all evil.
Do you think that's part of the hesitation that you were talking about a little while ago? Like
it was at first.
Back? Okay.
It took me a little while to actually kick that thought, because it's one of those things where I never thought it, I never believed it, but it was in my subconscious, and I never actually went in there and said, "Oh, wait, this thought's wrong."
Okay.
There's a few thoughts I've had over the years where it's just been embedded in me, but I never actually changed my thinking, even though I never believed it.
Okay. So something about your thinking was causing a short circuit there somewhere.
Yeah. I just didn't, I never addressed it, I guess you could say.
So you grew up in a church home.
Yep.
Family that was very, very devout.
Friday sundown to Saturday sundown was meant for the Lord.
Okay.
So you didn't do anything.
Okay. What do you mean didn't do anything?
You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything that took your eyes off of God, which would be movies, video games, anything to do with anything. Some believed you didn't play sports. Some didn't go swimming.
Yep.
My parents weren't that.
So you grew up in the 90s, not able to play video games on a Saturday.
Yeah. No 90s, no Saturday morning cartoons.
No Saturday morning cartoons?
No Saturday morning cartoons. I never got to see those. If they were on Sundays, I'd sometimes get a little bit. Or if you stay over at a friend's house, you kind of sneak a peek.
What was your favorite cartoon growing up? Do you have one, or did you just not see them?
I don't know. I kind of was. So I've got 2 older brothers, and there's 3 years apart between me and the oldest. Okay. So I just kind of watched what they watched. Okay. So you hung around with your older brothers a lot. Yeah. Okay. And they were brought up in the same thing. Have they? And I'm not trying to fast forward the story too much here, but at the same time, you talk about you've been vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Looking back and at your life as to where it was, where it is, and where you want it to be. You've been examining these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. I guess 2 questions. Have your brothers had that, your older brothers had that similar of a, I don't even know what you want to call it, a transformation stage? And what do they think about you
kind of being in this place. Have you talked to them about it?
No, I haven't. We never really had the relationship of talking to each other.
Okay.
I don't know why that is. I think it's because we always had the same friend groups.
Okay.
So we kind of became more friends.
Okay.
Most of the time I talk to my brothers, it's about movies or video games.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really get into the hard stuff.
As long as it's not on Saturday. Okay. I gotcha.
As long as it's not on Saturday.
Okay.
But we've never really had that personal relationship. I've always like, that's kind of one of the things that I've had to do as an adult is seek out those actual people where I can have those conversations and have some guidance from. Because we never really had that relationship growing up. So this will be, if they listen to this will be the first time they hear any of this.
Any of the stuff that we're going to kind of talk about. So, So in part of this transformation that you're going through, this examination of your life, where you're at, where you've been, where you're going, spirituality is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think that there are people out there who have had, I don't know if you'd call it a crisis of faith or what you would call it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think there are people out there who have had, they're gripped with wondering about spirituality. It's a big part of some people's life. Some people, it's not a part of their lives at all. And then some people like yourself, where it was a big part of your life growing up. You've examined that, haven't you?
Yeah. So it was about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I kind of, for a little bit, had a bit of a crisis is a good way to put it, where I kind of realized everything that I was taught. There was a lot of hypocrisy. There was a lot of things that you see. I mean, everywhere I went as a kid, especially growing up, I was in an SDA school, went to an SDA church. Mm-hmm. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? That was the saying everyone said anytime you did anything wrong. Well, what would Jesus do? If you wanted to get revenge, what would Jesus do? But I never saw anyone actually practice that. I never saw anyone live a great life. There was so much where you say one thing, but then I'll listen to you behind the scenes and you're not preaching the same message as you were at the podium. So there was a little while where I just kind of decided, no, I'm done with faith. And then I was listening to some people.
Was that difficult? Was that a difficult thing to say out loud? Like that's.
It was because I was raised like, I think my parents became SDA when I was like 6 months old. So it was all I knew. So it was my entire upbringing. All my beliefs were based off of my faith. So it was really hard. And then I realized I was listening to a podcast and someone was talking and they said too many people who leave religion, they leave all the good things behind too. And that's when I realized there was so much good with any religion, but with Christianity, there's so many good teachings. And I'm actually happy I was raised in the religion because there's a lot of characteristics that I picked up.
What are some of those things that you appreciate?
I think forgiveness is a big thing. And I think giving people a second chance is a big thing. And being able to turn the other cheek, more or less. Mm-hmm. Basically that, where I got some good values. They were told there's a bunch of stories in the Bible of where to do good things and why to do good things. Mm-hmm. And if you come out of Christianity, you can say, oh, those were just all stories. Mm-hmm. But they're stories that molded me. It's the same way. I mean, you have to read your kid a book about pooping so they learn how to poop.
Right.
It's one of those things I just saw kind of that was as I went through my younger years, I figured out like that molded me, and it's an amazing thing. And for my spiritual journey now, it's more of I'm just kind of searching to see what God is to me, well, what that means. Mm-hmm. But I fully believe that it's just about, I just want to treat people like they're people.
Right.
The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Yes.
I think that stems across a lot of religions. Yep. And if you just take that alone out of religion, and you just make that a part of your daily life, then it can be a great thing.
Well, it's interesting you talk about forgiveness. I look at the culture that we're living in right now, and it seems it's kind of a high wire act as to the life that you live, especially if you live a public life, where I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but to me, it's looking like there's a lot of people, especially if they live a public life, that are expected to live a perfect life. And if they don't live a perfect life, and if it becomes obvious that they don't live a perfect life, or they make a misstep somewhere, there doesn't seem to be a lot of room for forgiveness from certain, depending on what the misstep is, but it could be harsher than others. And it seems to me like that's something where, you'd have something to say about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason I wanted to do this, because I see that so much now, where it can be anything from pulling something up that you did 20 years ago. When 20 years ago, that was okay, whatever you did, but now you need to be condemned for it. And I don't know why the culture's like that, but I can't stand it, because either, I don't know if it's everyone wants to point the finger, so no fingers pointing at them, or if you're in the spotlight, I'm not in the spotlight, or maybe you feel good about yourself because you're outing someone. But we as a society, as a human race, we need to have the ability to grow, because nobody's perfect.
No.
And we will never have a perfect society.
Right.
So we need to have the ability to make mistakes. And without that, it can come crumbling down really fast.
And it's funny because the ironic part is you have this desire to be vulnerable, but we live in this culture. Some call it outrage culture. Some call it cancel culture.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, because of that culture we live in, how much of an incentive do we have to be vulnerable about something that happened 20 years ago? I mean, I'm 44 now. You're younger than I am, significantly, or a couple decades younger than me almost. But at the same time, what's the incentive for me to be vulnerable about something that I did in my 20s that I'm not necessarily proud of? Maybe even with the goal to help somebody who's younger, might be going through the same thing. But we live in this culture now where if I am vulnerable like that, that could really come back and bite me, couldn't it?
Yeah. And it used to be learn from my mistakes. But right now, I can't tell you my mistakes because you're going to use that against me. Okay. That seems what the culture is right now. So you can't grow under that mindset.
That's interesting that you say that. And I want to kind of move to what it was that compelled you to come here and step up. Some of these blocks that you had, the hesitations that you had, safe to say that they also, as you examined yourself and went into this kind of self-discovery phase, some shit came up that you didn't expect to come up.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I'll jump into what popped up. So when I was young, around ages 4 to 8, like I said.
So from the years of 4 till 8 years old. So from that 4-year period around.
About there. Like it's iffy because I was young and it was a long time ago. It was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There was a neighbor, a teenager who was friends with my brothers.
Okay.
And I was always trying to hang out with my brothers. They were set to babysit me, but I always wanted to be friends with them. 3 years difference. So the oldest always had to babysit the younger two, and he never wanted to because he wanted his own freedom. He's the older, he knows better. It's kids. And they had a friend who, for that time, for about 4 years, I believe, sexually molested me. And
wow.
Yeah, it was one of those things where going back when I was adult, searching through to figure out why am I acting the way I am, or why do I have these blocks? When that popped up, it was pretty shocking because the memories came up. And
so what does that mean when that popped up? Like, what are we talking about here? Are you alone in bed at night and suddenly it's like, holy shit, guess what happened to me? Like, or was it always kind of there, but you just sort of like, was it a repressed memory?
It was. I definitely, when I got my first girlfriend in high school.
Okay.
Then feelings came back up, and then I repressed them again until I was around 20 something.
So, okay. So you and your first girlfriend going through that phase of exploration and that newness is there. And then you're kind of like, whoa, like something's a little weird here.
Yeah.
Did you tell anybody about it?
Not then.
No.
Then I kept it to myself. I was at the point too where it was shame coming through religion, because it was one of those things where, well, it's a disgusting thing, and if I tell anyone, they'll look down on me. So this is
a boy that did this?
It was a male, yeah.
It was a male that did this? Okay.
Yeah. Teenager.
And over 4 years, we're not talking once or twice. This is like steadily for 4 years. Kind of like if the babysitter decided to take some liberties kind of situation.
Which is kind of what he was to us.
Okay. Your brothers had no idea?
No idea. As far as I know.
Do you think there might have been behavior with your brothers that he like? Are you the only one, or?
I hope so. I hope I'm the only one.
Right.
I don't know. Like I said, my brothers and I we don't talk that much about that.
Do they know about this?
No.
Your parents, do they know about this?
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, I mean, from when we're recording this weekend is when I'm going to be sitting them down and letting them know, because
before it gets
out.
Released.
I don't want them to hear this through the grapevine,
right?
If it gets out, and so.
It's extremely brave what you're doing here. And are you okay if I kind of ask some questions around it and that sort of thing? Yeah, you're cool with that.
Definitely.
First off, I guess it's worth noting, since you did talk about how you're not a fan of outrage culture, you're a fan of forgiveness, that sort of thing. This is in no way something that you're trying to do to out somebody or to get somebody out there. For us to know who this person is. That's not what you're trying to do here.
Well, I'm not even going to probably say any names. It was I was 4.5. I don't even know last names.
Okay.
So this is not to out anyone. This is more of a kind of, I don't know, just letting it know that there's two sides to when this happens. I could easily come out and join all the rage that's going on online, look for a lot of people are calling it, they want justice right now, but it's more revenge in my eyes. Oh. And that's not what I want. I don't think you can destroy hate with hate. Only love can. So if you're not preaching a message of love, then it's not really going to do you any good.
Wow. Do you have anger towards this person?
No, I don't. Looking back on it, I understand seeing where the kid was. It was a child at the time and a single mom situation on welfare. There's a good chance that he was maybe abused as well. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's where he was pushing on his anger was onto me. And I hated him for a while. But then
now back then, or was it like when the memories showed up, there was some hatred there
in my teens and my early 20s.
Okay.
I hated him, but I started to realize this was just probably someone in pain. And there's no use in me putting that anger onto someone.
Wow.
I didn't think that it was constructive at all. And I just didn't want to live in that mindset. Because I think if I constantly have a hate for a person, that's just going to stir in your heart. When you're angry, when you're in a bad mood, little things will piss you off.
Yes.
And I think that can stem from something like that, where if I'm constantly using that as an excuse or talking about how awful what he did was or trying to out him. And with all the outing and cancel culture, like for me, this is someone who I don't know. I haven't seen him since.
Okay. So last time you saw him, you were like 8 years old.
Last time I saw him, I was 8 years old. Okay. I don't know what his life is. I'm hoping I was a one-time thing for him, that I was the only person, but I'm hoping he found any help that he needed or got through this. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to cancel culture, especially cancel culture that's 10, 15 years ago,
okay,
me bringing up that stuff now,
okay,
if I found him and outed him, is selfish in my mind. Because if he's trying to move on with his life or someone's trying to move on with their life, why am I bringing it back up?
So you're giving him the benefit of the doubt.
For this case, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I got to ask the question, maybe not take it as far as people who subscribe or are very involved in the cancel or the outrage culture that you're talking about here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down that path, but let's just go maybe a quarter of the way down that path.
Okay.
If somebody said to you, hey, what if this guy hasn't stopped? What if this guy is continuing to do that to this day? Is that something that's weighed on you? And for example, if you tell your parents about it and your mom or dad, like you think about what a dad might feel like when the dad hears that, is there a responsibility to go and check that out to make sure this person isn't doing that right now?
It's a tough situation. I don't think there is a right answer to this scenario. Maybe, but if this is something, if I ever did talk to him, it would be private. It would be not out in public. And that's kind of one of the issues. Like, you're right.
So you would confront him on your own.
On my own.
And say, hey, this happened.
Or get the right authorities involved. But it was 20 years ago when he was a kid.
Right.
The problem is, I think for stuff like this, we as a society come together and everyone takes it on themselves to bring this person down.
Right. A little bit of vigilantism.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not necessarily fair, in my opinion.
Frankenstein, mob mentality.
Yeah,
you lead the charge of the people with the torches and the pitchforks and
especially
say, let's take this guy down.
You don't know. I don't know his story.
Right.
I don't know what he did at night. I don't know if after I left, he like I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But as a kid that went through trauma, I know many nights where you're in tears. If he was going through the same thing, and then all of a sudden I bring a mob, but I'm only putting a magnifying glass on that one area.
Right.
I think that's unfair for a group of people who weren't involved to get involved on something that has nothing to do with them.
So you're talking about that forgiveness again, and the idea that people can grow and people can move on.
It's a fine line when you come to, well, did he continue or is he still doing it?
Right.
But are you going to, it's almost like innocent until proven guilty. Are you going to put someone in jail just because of one thing without all the facts? Like, do I go after him and destroy his life just because maybe there's a chance he's continued?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a right answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will have their own opinion on it.
Right.
And especially people who've been through this, I know will probably think about it a different way. But it's a tough situation.